Hello, guys, welcome to Psych Minds. If you have not subscribed yet, do subscribe, like, and share. We are reading Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith, Part 3, Chapter 13. How to Support Someone. If you are supporting a loved one as they struggle with their mental health, it is quite possible that you feel completely inadequate. You don't know how to fix it. You're not sure what is the right thing to say. You want to make it all okay for them, but you can't. So you feel lost, desperately wanting to help and not knowing how. When someone we love is suffering, sometimes the stress that it brings up can give us the urge to escape how we feel about their pain. But when we do that, we can feel even more helpless and paralyzed because we stop ourselves from providing even some low level support that could help us to feel more confident in the supporting role. Ignagaki et al. 2012. While there are no hard and fast rules for supporting someone through mental health problems, there are a few things that can help along the way. 1. When we focus on trying to fix the problem, it is easy to underestimate the power of simply being there. Most people don't want to be told what to do, but they do want someone to keep showing up, to check in and show they care. 2. If the loved one has a specific diagnosis, it can help to learn about how it affects them and get more specific advice on the challenges they are facing. 3. Don't forget that the person you are supporting will have an idea of what they need, so asking them how they would like you to support them can help to give you guidance, while also communicating to them that you are listening. 4. Caring for someone can put a strain on your own mental health, but you cannot support them at your best if your mental health starts to deteriorate. So it is absolutely imperative that you prioritize your own health too, even in small ways. Keep a close eye on the basics. Keep track of your sleep, routine, nutritional intake, exercise, and social contact. 5. Get your own support, whether it be someone you trust, a support group, or a professional. Having a safe space to talk about your own feelings and think about how to move forward can help to stop you burning out. 6. Sets boundaries. Supporting someone else does not mean that your life no longer matters. Getting clarity on your own values can help to keep you going when things get tough, but also to ensure that you can maintain some balance. 7. Work on a crisis plan. If the person you are caring for ever feels unsafe, then it is important to have a crisis plan. It does not need to be complex. Acknowledge any early warning signs that things may be deteriorating and list the things that both of you can do to ensure everybody's safety in that scenario. Having a written plan with all the numbers you need to call makes it easier to do what you need in a crisis. 8. It is easy to underestimate the power of listening with compassion, kindness, and curiosity. The problems may not disappear when you do that, but you are helping that person to feel cared for and less alone, which greatly improves their chances of recovery. Social support is a powerful tool and it does not need to come with all the answers, just a big dose of compassion. 9. Supporting someone does not mean that you have to connect with big, intense conversations. Human connection in the smallest of moments matters. Walking while you are talking can help those who feel uncomfortable with opening up. You can also say nothing at all. Simply spending time together, even in silence, is okay. By being there, you are helping them to feel less alone and more cared for. 10. If you are trying to help that person open up about their struggles, using open questions that ask for more than a yes or no answer can help. For example, rather than, "Are you okay?" try, "What are you thinking?" 11. Listen carefully. Don't offer advice unless they ask for it. Just reflect back what you hear them saying. Let them know they are being heard and respected. 12. If that person talks about feeling hopeless or helpless, says that they cannot see a way out, or you become concerned about their safety, Always seek professional advice. 13. Don't underestimate the power of practical help. If someone is facing struggles with mental health, physical health, pre and postnatal periods, or grief, all of these can make the usual day to day tasks more difficult. For example, helping someone to eat a few healthy meals each week by turning up with a homemade dinner is a great way to support a loved one. 14. Being sensitive to situations in which your loved one may feel especially vulnerable or asking them if you don't know means that you can be there for them when they most need it. For example, if a loved one is recently bereaved and has to attend a social function alone for the first time, don't avoid them. Lean in and show them love and kindness. Those situations will still be hard, but feeling less alone can mean everything. 15. It is okay to change the subject. Being around someone does not mean you have to focus on their struggles the whole time. Distraction can be a welcome relief that they might find difficult to achieve when alone. 16. Have no expectations about their healing or recovery. It is never smooth and linear. There will be good days and bad days. Being surrounded by loved ones who are accepting of those ups and downs over the years will help them to do the same. 17. Be honest. If you want to be supportive but you are not sure how, say that out loud. Ask the person to let you know if you are saying or doing something that is not helpful. This openness allows everyone to feel less anxious and to truly connect, knowing that the situation is working for everyone. That brings us to the end of chapter 13, chapter summary. It is normal to feel overwhelmed or inadequate when supporting someone with mental health problems. You want to fix it, but you don't know how. Leaning in to support someone who is suffering can be stressful as you don't want to say the wrong thing, but don't avoid them. You don't have to fix everything to be a great support. Look after yourself to prevent burnout. Get your own support and set clear boundaries. Never underestimate the power of listening. Chapter 14, which is part of part 4, Understanding Grief. We often associate grief with the death of a loved one, but we can grieve at other times too. Endings that feel significant to us can trigger a grief reaction, even if the ending was not caused by death. We have fought our way through a pandemic that changed our lives. Along the way, we lost friends, family, livelihoods, jobs, family business built over generations. We lost financial security, final moments with loved ones, and precious time to hold and be close to them. We lost a sense of certainty about what the future holds and access to the social support that would help us cope with that. The profound losses experienced by so many have changed the world and left a psychological fallout that is heavy with grief. For anyone feeling the effects of a loss, there are some things to remember. Grief is normal. I have met so many people who tell themselves that they are failing at life because they are struggling to cope with grief. They make broad judgments about their strength of character as if grief is a disorder or a problem they should have fixed. Grief is a normal part of human experience. It is a necessary process to go through when we experience the loss of someone or something that we love, needed, felt, connected to, and that held meaning in our life. Sadness can be a part of grief, but there is much more to grief than sadness. It can be a deep yearning for the person who is gone. Relationships are at the core of what it means to be human. Among the people I have met in my career so far, their human connections have been the most meaningful aspects of their lives. When the relationship ends, the need for that connection does not stop. Your body grieves too. As explained in previous chapters, everything we think and feels happens within the body. Grief is no different. The loss of a loved one is a huge psychological and physical threat. The pain can feel both emotional and physical. The stress response is repeatedly triggered. I am talking about things that help us through grief. Let's be clear on what help means. Things that help do not make the pain disappear or make us forget or force us to let go. Help might be as simple as finding out that the roller coaster of emotions you feel is normal. It might be finding new ways to sit with and process the pain in a safe and healthy way. grief can feel intolerable, it makes absolute sense that our most natural human response to that might be to block it out. The pain is so intense and vast that it is terrifying. So we push it away if we can. But when we block one emotion, we tend to block them all. We can be left feeling hollow, numb, and struggling to find meaning and to engage with life in the way we once did. If we find a way to push it all down under the surface, maybe by keeping really busy, numbing ourselves with alcohol or with denial of what has happened, we may feel like we are doing okay. Then something small that seems insignificant blows the lid off, and this world of pain explodes, leaving us in shock and questioning whether we can cope. Unresolved grief is associated with depression, suicidality, and alcohol abuse. Zizek and Leon, 1990. So, denying our grief and pushing it away feels like self protection, but in the longer term can be the opposite. How easy it is to say all this, how hard it is in reality to experience it. When we block out pain, it is for good reason. An ocean of grief, as deep as it is wide, it feels too big, too much, never ending. How do we possibly face something like that? We can start by understanding what to expect. We can also make sure we get to know what helps us navigate the experience. Then we take things one experience at a time. We take a few strides into that ocean of grief. We feel it, we breathe, we step back and rest for a moment. Over time, we learn to take more steps, go deeper, immerse ourselves, knowing that we can safely return to the shore. Feeling the grief does not make it disappear, but we build up our strength to know that we can be reminded and yet still return to engage with life as it is today. Chapter summary. Endings that feel significant can trigger a grief reaction, even if the end was not caused by death. Grief is a normal and natural part of human being. The pain can feel both emotional and physical. Things that help do not make the pain disappear or force you to let go. Trying to completely block out grief can lead to problems further down the line. Chapter 15. The stages of grief. You might have heard about the stages of grief as originally described by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, 1969. Since then, it has been established that they are not experienced in stages and they do not happen in any particular order of time frame, but they do describe some of the most important common experiences that can be a part of normal, healthy grief. It is important to remember that these are not prescription for how you should be grieving. They are not a rule book for best type of grieving. They are a description of experiences you might notice along the way. So if you recognize any of them in your own experience or in a loved one, you know these are a part of normal, healthy grief. Denial. Denial and shock can help us survive the overwhelming pain of grief. It does not mean that we deny any of it is happening, but there may be a gradual pacing of how you take on board the situation you are facing and the new reality that awaits you, whether you choose it or not. Over time, denial begins to fade, and this allows new waves of emotion to surface. Anger. Underneath anger is often intense pain or fear. When we allow ourselves to truly feel that anger and express it, we can bring those other emotions to the surface and work on them. But many people have been taught to fear anger and to feel ashamed of expressing it. So we hold it under the surface, but like holding air underwater, it soon bubbles up in another time or place, an outburst at a friend or a doctor or family member that appears out of character. Anger is there to agitate us, to move and make something happen. When we experience anger about something that we cannot control, using physical movement helps us to use that physiological arousal in the way it was designed to be used. Venting in that way can be helpful to use that energy up generated by anger and bring ourselves back down to baseline, at least for a while. Once the body is calm, you are then more able to access the cognitive functions necessary to get clarity on your thoughts and feelings or any problem solving to be done. It can be helpful to do that with a trusted friend or loved one who can support you, or by writing things down. We know from the research that ruminating alone on angry feelings can make the anger and aggression more intense rather than less. Bushman 2022. Trying to do any sort of deep relaxation exercises before you have used physical action to move through the anger and bring your levels of arousal back down may be too difficult. But once you have expressed it in any way that best suits you, using guided relaxations can be helpful to replenish the body and mind until the next wave of anger arrives. Bargaining. Maybe this occurs in fleeting moments. Maybe it's hours or days spent ruminating over the what if and if only thoughts. This can easily lead down a path towards self blame. We start to wonder what could have been different if we had made different choices at a different time. At different times, we may start bargaining with a God, if we have one, or the universe, or maybe we promise to do things differently from now on and devote our lives to making things better in some way, trying desperately in our minds to make it all okay again. We just want things back the way they were. Depression. The word depression here is used to describe that deep loss and intense sadness and emptiness that follows after a bereavement. This is a normal reaction to loss and does not necessarily indicate a mental illness. Depression is a normal response to a depressing situation. Sometimes people around us can feel frightened by it and naturally want to fix it or cure it, or worse, want you to snap out of it. But recognizing depression as a normal part of healthy grief means that we can try to soothe ourselves through the pain and work hard to re engage with normal life and look after our well being as much as we can. The ideas and tools covered in section 1 still apply here, but we also don't have to deny pain or push it down or hide it, as I will explain later. Acceptance. When we grieve, when we give grief the time and space it needs, we begin to feel more able to step forward and play an active part in life again. Acceptance can be misunderstood as agreeing with or liking the situation. That is not true. In acceptance, the new reality is still not okay. It is still not as we want it to be, but we begin to take on the new reality, listen to our needs, open up to new experiences, and make connections. It is also important to point out that acceptance is not an end point in grief. It might be fleeting moments in which you have found a way to live in this new reality. There may be other moments when you return to bargaining and yearning for that person. Going back and forth between these stages is normal, and it is to be expected as you face all the new challenges and experiences in your life. This means if you have started to find new moments of contentment or joy, things seem to be going okay, and then you find yourself overwhelmed with a wave of anger or sadness or anything else. That does not mean you have gone backwards. You are not getting grief wrong. Grief comes in waves that we can't always predict. That brings us to the end of this chapter. Chapter summary. Denial can help us survive the overwhelming pain of grief. As denial fades, this allows new waves of emotions to surface. When we experience anger about something we can't control, using physical movement helps us to use the physiological arousal and bring the body back down to calm for a while. Ruminating over the what ifs can easily lead down a path of self blame. Depression is a normal reaction after a bereavement. Acceptance is not the same as liking or agreeing with the situation. Next chapter, chapter 16, the tasks of mourning. So, how do we begin to get through this intense, confusing, and often chaotic experience that we call grief? William Warden, 2011, described what he thought were the 4 tasks of mourning. William Warden, 2011. 1. To find some acceptance in the new reality after the loss. 2. To work through the pain of grief. 3. To adjust to an environment in which that loved one is missing. And 4. To find a way to keep a connection with them in a new way while also engaging in life as it is now. So after a loss, people deal with their grief in different ways. While some are oriented towards feeling the pain and emotions that arise, others focus on trying their best to distract themselves from the overwhelming emotions. Neither of these are wrong. In fact, we need both. We cannot work through grief all in one go and feel that much emotional pain without rest. But we cannot do the work through grief without allowing ourselves the space to feel it. So the work becomes a process of movement between feeling the pain and replenishing the body and mind with something distracting or comforting that allows you to a break between the waves of emotion. Strobe and Shoot, 1999. So spending time with the emotion that comes up, whether you made an active choice to go there by looking in a memory box or visiting a memorial, or if that emotion rose up without choice, is a necessary part of the process. It allows the feelings to unfold and be expressed through talking, writing, or weeping. When you feel you need to step back from that, it helps to return your attention to something that brings that stress response back down. Using the self soothing skills from section 3 can be helpful. See page 109. Especially when the pain has been overwhelming. Grounding techniques may also be helpful here, but there is no set prescription, as every individual, every relationship, and therefore every grieving process is unique. The key is to find something safe that allows you some time for restoration, even if that time is short. One of the problems with the trying to get on with it mode and not allowing ourselves to focus on the loss at any point is that it can take relentless effort, and there is no break from that. We might then need to stay busy for fear of being overwhelmed if we press pause. So we become stuck. We are not able to rest because the work of keeping the pain at arm's length is constant. When pain is vast, the action we take to push it down and keep it under the surface can cause damage to both the individual and their relationships. If you disconnect with one emotion, you disconnect from them all. Feel whatever is there. It is okay when you are grieving to feel everything. It is okay to feel despair. It is okay to feel rage. It is okay to feel confused. It is also okay to feel joy. It is okay to smile if that is where the movement takes you. It is okay to enjoy the warm sun on your face for a moment or laugh at someone's joke. It is all okay. It is normal to feel guilty when you start to allow yourself to live again, but allowing small moments of joy to wash over you is just as important to the process of grieving as allowing the pain in. Over time, we learn to engage with life and recognize that does not mean forgetting. The love and connection continues. Small steps forward every day. Do not underestimate the power of the smallest step forwards. If standing upright and washing your face every day feels like a battle, then let washing your face each morning become the current goal. Meet each chapter from where you are and push it where it moves. No expectations. Expectations about how you should feel, how you should behave, and how quickly you should heal only makes grief harder. Many of those expectations come from a history of our misunderstanding about grief as a taboo subject. Thanks to some pioneers in this area of research, we now have a much better understanding of the process of grief and how to help ourselves through it. The expectations lead people to falsely believe that they are going mad, getting it all wrong. The lack of conversation about grief leads us to worry about whether we are getting it right. The opposite to this and a much more helpful approach is cultivating a compassionate connection with yourself and others, one that allows you to express your feelings in a safe place. Expression. Expressing how you feel is not always easy. Some have the urge to talk, others clam up and can't find the words. If you want to talk, find someone whom you trust and start talking. If you have all those very normal fears of being a burden, upsetting the other person, say so. A good friend will tell you what they can manage. If you cannot talk, write. In whatever way the word comes to you, the act of getting those thoughts and feelings out onto the page can help to unravel some of what is going on in your mind and body. It is through the processing of those painful feelings that the work of grieving is done. Some people find expression through painting, music, movement, or poetry. Whatever offers a safe avenue for you to release and express that raw emotion is worth making time and space for. If you are not sure where to start, just start with anything that comes naturally to you. Start with the thing that has helped in the past, or start with something just because you are curious about how it might be. If you don't have a therapist to hold the boundaries for you, this is something you can do to ensure that you can step into and back out of the emotion. There is a time to feel and a time to block, a time for turning towards and a time for turning away to rest your mind and body. So if you are going to spend some time releasing and expressing that emotion, have those safety nets that help you back. Remember and keep living. When remembering someone causes pain and engaging in the present without them causes pain, the two experiences can feel at war with each other. The demands of life keep coming, and just one memory can crop up and bring you to your knees. Perhaps one of the things that changes over time with grief is the bringing together of these two things, or the discovery through trying of a way the two needs can coexist. The need to engage in life and the need to remember and stay connected with that person who is lost. This could be making time for moments that celebrate their lives, spending time in rituals that help you to continue your relationship with them, while also making deliberate choices every day to live in a way that honors both past and future. The work of grief appears to be about stepping into your pain, allowing it to wash over you, soothing and supporting yourself through it, and stepping out of it again into life as it is now, finding ways to rest and nourish your body and mind through the exhaustion of grief. Samuel 2017. Grow around the wound. The wound that is left following a loss is not something to be fixed or healed. We do not want to forget that person. We want to remember them and continue to feel connected to them. So the wound does not diminish or disappear, it remains while we work hard to build a life around it. Rando 1993. This is a concept that many people find helpful in therapy. The person is just as important to you as they ever were, and so the pain of losing them continues. But we find a way to acknowledge their life while beginning to grow and create a life with meaning and purpose alongside that grief. You find ways to remember, celebrate, and feel your connection to that person and to keep living. You learn that pain and joy, despair, and meaning can all be a part of life. You learn what you are capable of surviving, the depths from which you can pull yourself up, and from that, you keep going. When to get professional help? Going to a counselor or therapist does not mean you are getting the grief thing wrong. We need support to get us through the pain of grief. But not everybody has someone that they can trust or want to talk openly with. The therapy room can become a sanctuary, a safe space to release raw emotions with someone who is trained to sit firm with you through that. The therapist can help you to make sense of things, use skills to help you manage safely, understand more about grief, and listen in a way you have never been listened to before, without judgment, advice, or attempts to minimize and fix things for you. A therapist knows the work of grief is through the pain, and their work is to walk through it with you and offer a guide when you need it. That brings us to the end. Chapter summary. Grief demands that we work through the pain. It takes time to adjust to a life in which the loved one is missing. We need to find a way to keep that connection going with the loved one without their physical presence. Acceptance of the new reality means we can continue to engage with the things that matter to us. Whatever you feel, it's okay to feel that. Do not underestimate small steps and steady progress. Chapter 17. The Pillars of Strength. The Greek psychotherapist Julia Samuel set out the key structures that support us to rebuild our lives through grief, 2017. She calls them pillars of strength because they take work and persistence to build. By nurturing each of them, we gain a stable structure to help us through. The pillars of strength are listed below. 1. Relationship with person who has died. When we lose a loved one, our relationship and love for that person does not end. Adapting to the loss involves finding new ways to feel close to the loved one. For example, visiting a special place that you shared or spending time at a grave or memorial. 2. Relationship with the self. Every other section in this book touches on self awareness, and working through grief demands the same. In understanding our own coping mechanism, finding ways to get support and look after our health and well being throughout, we must listen to our own needs as best we can along the way. 3. Expressing grief. There is no correct way to express grief. If you prefer to do that through quiet reflection, memorials, or sharing with friends, the act of allowing yourself to feel whatever comes up and expressing that helps the natural process. When emotions are especially overwhelming, you can make use of the skills offered in section 3 to help. See page 99. Okay. We can't go back. Okay. 4. Time. Putting an expectation on how much you should need for grief is setting yourself up for struggle. When everything is overwhelming, it helps to focus only on each day as it comes until you feel strong enough to take a broader view of the future. Adding pressure to feel a certain way in a particular time frame only adds pain and distress. 5. Mind and body. As I covered in section 1, our physical state, emotions, thoughts, and actions are like weaves in a basket. We cannot change one without influencing the other. This makes taking care of all of those aspects of our experience even more important. Regular exercise, eating well, and ensuring we maintain some social contact will all help us to strengthen our mental health when we most need it. Limits. 6th. When loved ones around us may be full of advice about how we should be managing and when we should be getting back into everyday life, remembering our capacity for holding boundaries becomes an essential tool. If we are building self awareness and listening to our own needs, sometimes we need to put boundaries in place and maintain them in order to do what is in our best interest. 7. Structure. I have spoken in previous chapters about our human need for balance between predictability and adventure, structure and flexibility. When our mental health becomes vulnerable after a loss, it makes sense to offer a degree of flexibility that allows for grieving, while also maintaining some level of structure and routine that helps prevent deterioration of your mental health from the absence of healthy behavior such as exercise and social contact. 8. Focusing. When there are not enough words to describe the sensations that we feel, focusing our attention on simply observing our internal world and visualizing those sensations in the body can help to build awareness of our own shifts in emotional and physical state. That brings us to the end of chapter 17. Chapter summary. We can rebuild a life after a bereavement with time, work, and persistence. Create new ways you can feel close to your loved ones with a special place or memorial. Listen to your need as much as you can along the way. There is no correct way to express grief. Drop any expectations about how much time you should spend grieving. We will continue with the part 5. We have completed part 4 today, the complete of it. I will be reading and continuing in the next session. Bye bye for now. If you have any questions, any doubts, recommendations, feedback, anything at all, you can reach out to me in the comment section of the video you're viewing or in the community section. If you have not subscribed yet, do subscribe, like and share if you like. Bye bye. Take care. Keep reading.